The wine hit his chest before the room hit silence. The wine hit his chest before the room hit silence. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above 200 guests, dressed in tailored black and polished silk. Laughter had been echoing off the marble floors just seconds earlier. Then the woman in the silver gown stepped forward, her heels sharp against the tile, a glass of Bordeaux poised between manicured fingers. "You people never listen," she said, voice edged and public. She tilted the glass, slowly, deliberately. Red wine streamed down the front of his white shirt, soaking through cotton, spreading wide like a wound opening under bright light. It dripped from his collar, traced the line of his belt, dotted the marble at his feet. No one gasped. No one moved. 200 witnesses froze in place, eyes shifting, hands tightening around champagne flutes. The man in the navy suit didn't flinch. He looked down at the stain blooming across his chest. Then he looked back at her and said nothing. But to understand what just happened and what's about to happen, we need to go back 3 hours. The gala that was never about the party. The Chamberlain Hotel sat at the edge of the Chicago River like it had always owned the skyline. 42 floors of polished stone and glass, and tonight, every important room inside it belonged to Hargrave Lister Development Corp. This was their annual gala. But this year, the word annual didn't quite cover it. This year, the party had a purpose. Hargrave Lister was weeks away from drowning. 3 over-leveraged projects, a quietly restructured line of credit, and a board that had been asking harder questions at every closed-door meeting. What stood between the company and a very public unraveling was a single signature, a $1.08 billion infrastructure partnership with a firm called Maitland Global Infrastructure. CEO Richard Hargrave had been telling his board for months that the deal was done. Tonight was supposed to prove it. Catherine Aldrich had been with Hargrave Lister for 11 years. Senior Vice President of Client Relations. She knew every person in this ballroom by name, by net worth, and by usefulness. She had built her position on exactly that, knowing who belonged in rooms like this, and making sure everyone else understood they didn't. At 7:14 in the evening, a man walked in alone, no entourage, no assistant trailing behind him with a phone, no name badge clipped to his lapel, just a navy suit, no tie, and the particular kind of stillness that doesn't announce itself. He was black. He was unhurried, and he moved through the glittering crowd, the way water moves around stone, quiet, deliberate, leaving no disruption behind him. Not one person recognized him. Not one person thought to ask why. "Excuse me, we need more ice." At table 12, Catherine spotted him near the bar. She didn't slow her stride, didn't extend a hand or offer a name. She walked directly toward him the way people walk toward furniture without the consideration owed to another person, and held out her empty glass before she'd even fully stopped moving. "We need more ice at table 12, she said, eyes already scanning the room beyond him. "And make sure the Pinot Grigio is actually chilled this time." Last pour was unacceptable. She released the glass into his space and turned away in the same motion. He looked down at the glass, now resting at the edge of his fingers. He set it gently on the bar behind him. His jaw didn't tighten, his eyes didn't flash. A few feet away, a young server, maybe 22, 23, a name tag that read Miguel, had watched the entire exchange. His eyes moved from Catherine's retreating silver gown to the man in the navy suit. Something passed across Miguel's face. Recognition of what just happened. Then he looked down at his tray and said nothing. The man in the navy suit moved to a quieter corner of the room. He wasn't rattled. He was paying attention, cataloging, measuring, filing things away with the patience of someone who had learned long ago that the first insult is rarely the last. 3 more times before the wine. The next 90 minutes passed like a slow tide coming in. The first incident happened near the east side of the ballroom. A woman in a champagne-colored dress, the kind of woman who wore jewelry like armor, waved him over with 2 fingers, the way you'd signal a cab. She pulled a silver fox stole from her shoulders and held it toward him without making eye contact. "Be careful with this," she said. "It's worth more than your salary." He took it from her hands, held it for a moment, then draped it carefully over the back of her chair and walked away. She didn't notice. That was somehow worse. 20 minutes later, a junior VP in a tight tuxedo approached him near a circle of executives mid-conversation. The man placed a firm hand on his shoulder and steered him sideways like he was redirecting a cart. Staff areas through the kitchen, buddy. 2 fingers. That's all it took. He lifted the hand off his shoulder, with 2 fingers quietly, precisely, and stepped aside without a single word. The junior VP barely registered it. He was already back in his conversation. Then came Hargrave. CEO swept past him in a group of 3, champagne in hand, not even granting a full glance. Just a sideways murmur to the associate beside him. At least the help is dressed better this year. Followed by a ripple of low laughter that dissolved as quickly as it came. He heard it. His expression didn't shift. Not a tightened jaw, not a slow blink, nothing. But if you watched his hands and the story demands that you do, they were flat against his sides. Open palms, perfectly still. No tremor, no curl toward a fist. That stillness wasn't resignation. It was something far more deliberate. It was a man who knew exactly what he was carrying and had decided, long before tonight, exactly when he would set it down. She wanted an audience. Catherine found him near the grand window. The Chicago skyline stretched behind him, 40 floors of light against a dark sky. He was standing quietly, alone, watching the room the way he had been all evening, observing, measuring, unhurried. She had an audience before she even opened her mouth. That was the point. You. Her voice carried across the nearest cluster of guests, sharp and deliberate. Heads turned. I told you about the ice over an hour ago. What are you still doing in here? He turned to face her directly. For the first time all evening, he held her gaze without looking away. I'm not on your staff, he said. The laugh came immediately. Practiced, performative, designed to pull others in like a current. She looked sideways at the nearest guests, inviting them to share the joke. Oh, really? She tilted her head. Then who exactly are you? He drew a breath to answer. She didn't let him. She reached sideways, lifted a glass of Bordeaux from the table beside her, and stepped forward. Her voice dropped just enough to feel intimate and just loud enough to carry. Let me make this clear. You don't belong in this room. She poured the wine slowly, deliberately, every second of it visible to the 50 nearest guests, and then the 50 beyond them. The red spread across his white shirt like a curtain being drawn. He looked down. He looked up. 200 people stood in absolute silence. Not one of them said a word. My name is Leonard Maitland. He reached into his jacket, not the outer pocket. The inside one, the pocket closest to his chest. He moved without urgency, without theater, the way a man moves when he has nothing to prove and everything already decided. He produced a single business card, held it between 2 fingers, then he leaned forward and set it on the white tablecloth beside them. Face up, smooth and deliberate, as a period at the end of a very long sentence. He straightened and he spoke. My name is Dr. Leonard Maitland. The quiet in the room deepened, if that was possible. I am the founder and sole owner of Maitland Global Infrastructure. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. The words moved through the ballroom on their own weight. I am the signature on the deal your company cannot survive without. Catherine's face didn't crumble. It drained. Slowly, completely, the way color leaves something when the light changes and doesn't come back, 15 feet away. Richard Hargrave set his champagne glass on a passing tray. The small, clean clink of crystal on silver was the loudest sound in the room. The business card sat on the white tablecloth. The wine stain sat on the white shirt, both of them evidence now, both of them permanent. The room rearranged itself. Catherine stepped backward. Not a graceful retreat, an actual stumble, her heel catching on nothing, one hand reaching sideways for the table's edge to steady herself. Her mouth opened, stayed open. Nothing came out. Richard Hargrave was already moving forward, his face cycling through expressions too fast to settle on any one of them. Dr. Maitland, this is please, let me assure you. Leonard raised one hand, just one. Palm open, fingers relaxed. The gesture was almost gentle. Hargrave stopped mid-syllable. The murmuring began then low and spreading, moving through the ballroom like a current finding its level. The same 200 people who had stood in absolute silence 60 seconds ago, were suddenly shaking their heads, exchanging glances, performing a collective outrage they hadn't managed to locate when it actually mattered. The junior VP who had steered Leonard by the shoulder was pressed against the far wall, studying the floor. The woman with the fur stole was simply gone. Leonard looked at Catherine one final time. Whatever he saw there, he didn't linger on it. "I think we're done here," he said. He buttoned his wine-stained jacket. One button, slowly, evenly. Then he turned and walked toward the exit, unhurried, his shoes the only sound crossing the marble floor. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. What $1 billion of silence sounds like. The letter arrived at Hargrave Lister's legal department 47 hours later. It was 3 paragraphs. No preamble, no softening language. Maitland Global Infrastructure was formally withdrawing from all deal negotiations effective immediately. No renegotiation. No request for a second meeting. Stated reason was a single phrase that would get quoted in every subsequent news cycle: a fundamental misalignment in institutional values. Hargrave Lister's stock dropped 14% before noon on the day it became public. The board convened an emergency session that same afternoon. Catherine Aldrich was placed on administrative leave before the meeting ended. 2 weeks later, her termination was announced not through a quiet internal memo, but through a press release. The company's transparent attempt to demonstrate accountability loudly enough to matter, it didn't fully work. Richard Hargrave issued a public statement calling the incident deeply unacceptable and reflecting attitudes that have no place in our organization. 3 additional executives who had been present that evening, who had watched and said nothing, were flagged for internal review. 2 of them resigned before the process was completed. Then Miguel's footage surfaced. The young server had recorded it on his phone, not all of it, but enough. The ice comment, the shoulder grab, the wine pour, the silence of 200 people who chose to become furniture. Within 6 hours, the clip had been viewed 11 million times. A federal civil rights inquiry was opened within the week. Maitland Global Infrastructure released its own statement. 4 sentences. The final one noted that Dr. Maitland had redirected the billion-dollar investment to a minority-led development coalition operating across Chicago's South Side. The deal that was supposed to rescue Hargrave Lister now belonged to the communities that companies like Hargrave Lister had spent decades overlooking. That was the consequence. Not just for Catherine, for the culture that had taught her she could. He never mentioned that night again. 6 months later, Dr. Leonard Maitland stood on a patch of Southside Chicago soil that was about to become something: affordable housing, small business incubators, a community health center with his foundation's name nowhere on the exterior. He was wearing a Navy suit, no tie, and he was smiling quietly, genuinely, the kind of smile that has nothing to prove to anyone in the vicinity. Hargrave Lister survived, barely and differently. Their culture was under formal review. Their reputation carried something that wouldn't dry clean out. Catherine Aldrich made no public appearances, no interviews, no statement. Miguel Herrera was in his first semester, studying urban planning on a full scholarship through Maitland's foundation. Leonard never filed a personal lawsuit, never sat down for an interview about that evening. When a reporter caught him briefly outside the groundbreaking and asked why he had stayed so calm through all of it, he paused for just a moment. "I've been underestimated my entire life," he said. "At some point, you stop being surprised. You just make sure it matters." He walked back toward the ceremony without looking back.